So I reiterate here, the bill is dead.
The story of this great city is about the years before this night. We are free!
Hey, this is Ho Ho Hong Kong. I am Andy Curtin. I'm sitting next to Mohammed Magdi.
Mohammed Magdi is back.
Yeah, with the standard call sign at the front. If you want to find me online, at Andy Curtin on Instagram, Facebook, all of that, how do we find you?
The other Mohammed on Instagram, Mohammed Magdi on Facebook and Twitter, and the other Mohammed on Patreon.
Well, we've got our own Ho Ho Hong Kong Patreon
true.
is up now. We've got bonus content every week. So if you want to check it out, just go to patreon.com, Ho Ho Pod. It's pretty good. This week's one was great.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to
All
this
the
one.
stuff we can't put on out in the public sphere.
Yeah.
Now, today's guest, we've got author Nury Vittachi. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hi, this is Nury, and I've been dragged into a strange cellar
Into a dungeon.
by two very odd-looking people. So call the police if I don't appear tomorrow morning, right?
That's a great segue, actually,
Yeah.
because I want to say a massive thank you to Aftermath for hosting us today. Perfect. It is, and Carl for letting us in. This is
a great space.
great live music, great comedy. It's and a good bar as well.
Yeah, the bar staff is friendly.
Come
There's
check
a
it
lot
out.
of
Wyndham
stuff
Street. It's a
here.
really good place to hang out.
Yeah, and there's no windows, so if you do want to imprison somebody, so
Windows, I think, are overrated.
yeah, that's right. Who needs windows? So you don't need bars if you don't have windows,
You
right?
don't need to see the outside world when you're making a mess of yourself or listen to a good show.
That's right. So I don't know. Depending on which side you're on, police, you could use this to lock up the.
There are
the
cassette
evil-
players that don't work though, so that's something right
Oh,
here
really?
behind you.
Cassette players.
All right. Dude, that thing looks older than you.
Are you looking at me or him?
No, the stereo. I get cross-eyed sometimes. So why don't we start with your Hong Kong history? When did you first come to the city?
My father lived here years and years ago, so we've always had a family connection here. But
That was before you moved here?
Before I moved here, and then basically, to cut a long story short, I got married, came here on honeymoon, fell in love with this place, and never left. So this is that was in the 80s. So this is the fourth decade of our honeymoon.
Wow.
And in fact, we never went back and collected our wedding presents, so they're still waiting for us.
Where's your
on the other side of the
hometown?
world. I was born in Colombo, Sri Lanka. My wife is from UK.
Wow, yeah. And so did you come here from the UK?
We decided to circle the world for a honeymoon, backpacking, as crazy young people do. And so we settled from the UK. We went through Asia. So actually flew here from Sri Lanka.
Man, in the 80s as well.
Yeah.
Where did you
that's
go?
great. Yeah. Mostly we did India, Sri Lanka, and then we were going to do Hong Kong for a couple of weeks, Australia, Pacific, America, and then back. But we just got stopped halfway.
Get your foot stuck in the mud.
Yeah, that's right. And happy to have done so.
I listened to you somewhere saying that during that time you stayed at Chungking Mansions in the 80s.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
We lived
How was that in have you been recently?
How often do you go to Chungking?
Yeah, and how was it in comparison to today's Chungking Mansion? Was it worse?
Yeah.
This is a frequent question on the podcast.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah,
Because people say it got cleaned up,
yeah.
and it doesn't look like it's been cleaned up.
Oh.
Also, how broke were you to stay at Chungking Mansion for your honeymoon?
Yeah, we were very
And how
broke.
mad was your wife at you for making her stay at Chungking Mansion?
Did you get the little the swan towel on the bed?
Oh, no towels in the bed where we were staying. It was
Yeah.
like...
No,
You know, I was-
no rose petals.
I would say that we arrived in Hong Kong with $9 in our pocket, and today I owe HSBC $5.5 million.
Wow,
I made it.
Yeah, you've done it.
Nice.
That's how logic works these days. Isn't it?
That's definitely sounds like an improvement.
I owe big. I made it. That's how finance works. It's crazy, but well, it functions, doesn't it?
What was it that grabbed you about the city? Do you remember? Do you have a vivid memory of that trip?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just a wonderful city. The people are amazing. The food is fantastic. It's up all night every night. You know, it's
Was
it's got
it
great
like that
spirit.
then? Because it's got such a reputation, pre the last year and a half for being a party city.
Yeah.
Was it like that then?
it is a party city, but in a sort of quiet way. I mean, the people here are quite calm and gentle, and like it's like a democracy without the crime, is how somebody said it. And technically, it's not a democracy, but it feels more like a democracy than most democracies. And yet, the crime is missing. So, I mean, to give you an example, once we had the kids, I mean, my daughter, pretty teenage girl, tiny, used to go out jogging at midnight. That was her
Oh
habit.
yeah. Shanghai was
And it
like
was
that as well.
fine.
You know.
Yeah,
We always used to
cities. Wonderful.
Like,
Yeah,
I
when
remember
you live around here for a very long time, you forget that it can be dangerous
when
outside of.
when you go back, like I
Yeah.
remember walking through the Melbourne CBD, which is not a particularly safe place at night on the weekends, and I remember feeling like I was like, oh, there's a group of guys behind me. Like I was suddenly aware of my setting a
Surroundings,
little
yeah,
bit, and I was like,
yeah.
man, I haven't had to think about this in
yeah,
a really long
you,
time.
You let your guard down when you live here for a long
Whereas,
time.
like,
It's very safe.
Shanghai, my wife would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna walk home, down that alley." I'm like,
You
yeah,
can-
yeah,
you can
leave
be-
a key out,
I think it's one of the very few places in the world where you can be like a female, like party drunk at like 4 a.m. and walk home and not worry about your safety at all. Like
Yeah.
I come from the Middle East where even men after like 10 p.m. you gotta look around.
Yeah. Let's hope Hong Kong never loses that magic. Safety. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Asia and there are some countries that are a little less safe, but in general, I mean,
Yeah.
Japan is very safe. Singapore's very
Singapore,
safe.
yeah,
Korea is very
yeah.
safe.
Malaysia, not so much. I think.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing.
You lived
Different
in
parts.
both countries, Singapore and Malaysia,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you were young.
Yes. Well, I'm so old that in those days they were one country. I mean, that's
Oh right,
were they?
yeah.
yeah, and they were called
Malay.
Malaya, and Singapore was like
Huh.
the main city in Malaya.
Our Singaporean fans are not gonna like that.
But wasn't it pretty brief actually? They
Yeah.
united and then separated within a year or something, wasn't it? It was, or was it a short period of time?
No, Singapore was part of Malaya for years, and then,
What was it,
and then
years
there
or
was
was it-
there was like an independence movement.
Yeah.
that separated it.
But it was Lee Kuan Yew did both, right? Like he was there for the unification
yeah.
and the separation. I
Well,
think I remember there was some quote where he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
Lee Kuan Yew's a funny guy. He's well, that's another story. But
That's a
my
rabbit
family's
hole.
got a connection with him. But,
Sure. Oh, really? There you go.
Yeah. One of my first interviews or my first sort of press moments in the press spotlight was when Lee Kuan Yew came here about maybe 20, 30 years ago, and I was at a press conference, and he was very angry with me, and I couldn't work out why. And the organizer of the press conference said later that Lee Kuan Yew says you've been following him and harassing him for 30 years. And I was in my 20s at the time. So I thought, okay, this doesn't work. And what he'd done he'd remembered an article that my father had written about him 30 years
"Do
earlier.
you have the same
Wow.
name as your dad?"
Same name, same bald
Right.
head.
There you go.
Same
So
brown
you actually
skin.
thought you're the same person.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I've been
wow.
following him for
He's
30
like,
years.
He's like, "You've been following for 30 years. You look great."
Life is
So
weird.
so journalism runs in the family, I think is the
Yes.
message there.
Yeah, my father was one of the first investigative reporters in Asia, and it's funny. He went on tour with a guy called Harry Evans, and Harry Evans kind of was the founder of investigative journalism in the UK, editor of the Sunday Times. He became so this little group of investigative journalists way back in the 50s and 60s started the whole trend around the world. It's a pretty amazing thing they did.
And is your dad still around now?
No, he passed away many years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. But he obviously passed on a passion for writing.
Yes, indeed, and Harry Evans, he died quite recently. Actually, he was very old. But his wife was Tina Brown, editor of Vanity Fair,
Yeah.
and so on. So they're a kind of like journalistic royalty. That little group of journalists from all those years ago.
And so when you first came here, was that what you started doing?
Yes, I was.
What year exactly were we talking about?
This is 87.
87.
Yeah. So I worked for a magazine for a little while. Then I started working for the South China Morning Post. I wrote a daily gossip column
Huh.
called Lai Si. And that's what really made me as a journalist, because as a daily gossip columnist, you get to know everybody.
Was it like about like pop culture, just celebrities and so on?
It was on the business pages.
Okay.
So it was technically about business deals, but I soon realized that, Hong Kong is a business city. So I also realized that the businessmen know way more about what's going on than the reporters.
Right. Yeah.
So I quit the FCC and joined the Hong Kong Country Club. So I thought, okay, this is where I get the stories.
That's where the scoop comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
Were there any stories back then that were sticking in your mind when you think about that time?
Well, it's funny. We were always in trouble because in those days we were criticizing China a lot, and the people who ran this place, mostly British, were nervous about that. So, they kept trying to shut me up. And I always say, it was much more dangerous for journalists in the British era than it is in the Chinese era. And people are surprised by that. But I got sacked multiple times for writing the truth in the British era.
What kind of things did they not want to see or hear?
They believed that the Chinese had no sense of humor, and any sort of criticism was dangerous because it would cause the advertising to stop and the Chinese business people to get angry with us.
Which, if you think about losing face, can be an issue, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I worked a lot with a cartoonist called Larry Fane, who did a column, a cartoon strip called Lily Wong, and I did this Lycée column, and sometimes we collaborated, so we were always in trouble. But at one stage, we were number 1, 2, and 4 on the Hong Kong bestseller list with our cartoon books and funny books. So it didn't make us rich people, but it was nice that sort of free press was celebrated here.
And you got that kind of recognition as well.
Yeah.
Did you feel, where was the criticism of China coming from? Did you feel it was necessary, or were you just trying to say something different, or was it just par for the course in commenting on, the city?
No, well, the thing is that Hong Kong was already evolving from a very westernized city to more of a world city where not everything was seen through a Western lens.
Right.
So those changes were quite interesting, and the changes, of course, are still going on. And we're in a transition period, and what do you do in a transition period? You transition.
Right.
But a lot of people don't see this, and they think we have to stay Western until the last moment, and then we cry and weep and throw ourselves into the sea. But it doesn't work like that.
So your book that's come out about the Hong Kong protests, the other side of the story, is not critical of the government. Is that fair?
Oh no, I'm critical of the government. The government are completely useless. They kept saying there are foreign powers involved with this, but they said it in such a robotic way,
Right.
that it sounded like a lie. And in fact, it was the truth. But they were just completely hopeless at any kind of PR.
Yeah, well, I don't want to dive into that can of worms just yet, but just moving back, if we could take that as like a flag point where, whilst you might have some criticism of the government, is it a different perspective from what you had in, say, the 2000s?
Yeah.
How did your perspective change?
Yeah.
I guess is what I'm getting at.
Right. Yeah, it changed in that the journalists tend to fight for the underdog,
Right.
And so in those days,
Yes, China, that underdog.
yeah, that's right, that small little weak underdog. But the underdog here in Hong Kong, certainly last year, was the average Hong Kong parent, the mother. So I was getting all these calls and emails and messages from mothers saying, my kid is being told ridiculous things. Can you please help sort this out? So
do you think that that protest was when your perspective changed?
Yeah, I actually marched with the protesters for 30 years. Every year I was out there, I was rounding up people.
They have a rich history of protesting, right?
Yeah. My family would laugh at me and say, "Dad, just go by yourself. Don't want to go this time."
Huh.
What was your opinion on it, though? Did you think that there was China was coming in, and you wanted to stake out where the rules were, that certain things shouldn't change, or how did 'cause the kind of things you might have been protesting about. I'm guessing like the curriculum changing in schools. That was a huge protest. Were you involved in that?
I just automatically went to every protest. As
As
a good underdog defender.
Just but as a did you
read
civic
it up.
duty or
It was a duty certainly, but it was when I started to realise just how much involvement there was from outsiders who don't have Hong Kong's welfare in mind, and who are basically very, very anti-democratic. That's kind of what worried me.
So that was the turning point. Is that what
Yeah,
changed your
yeah.
perspective? That's
Did
super
you
interesting.
figure that out through your work as a journalist, or just through being in the protests?
It was. Do you remember the umbrella movement
Sure.
of 2014?
Yeah, 14.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was so enthusiastic about that. I thought, wow, this is great. It's so peaceful. It's so calm.
Right.
It's a nice atmosphere. And I wrote these editorials for the New York Times.
Yeah,
Right.
sorry. It's amazing.
praising it.
Okay.
And I started to get uncomfortable, and I realized, wait a minute, there's something weird going on here. And I realized it was branding. It was there was a branding push behind the scenes that was had certain keywords: democracy, freedom, struggle. We are the good guys, and the other side was being branded. The parent side, if you like, was being
Right.
branded as evil, dictatorial. And I thought, hang
Can't
on a
imagine
minute.
where that would come from.
I've read that somewhere. And that's when I realized that there were these professional revolution consultants. And
Right.
they were using the book. They were using the revolution consultants book.
Yeah.
They were very active in Egypt.
Yeah, I was actually about to refer to that. Like there is a similar trend, similar like school of thought about the Arab Spring as well. It's exactly the same,
And
but
even in the US now.
and even in the US now, that's right. And beyond that, there is also but the narrative behind what the government does and the people who support them is exactly the same as well, because it's the first thing you do is you point fingers at outside fingers, literally, and you go like, oh, it's all like, it's all
It's
the
the Black
Mossad
Hand.
or the like. Obviously every country has the other that you can, and for us it's the Mossad always. It's the easiest thing to blame. It's always but the crazy part is that Egypt is the first country that has diplomatic relations with Israel officially for like more than 30 years. So it doesn't even make sense if you think about it logically that the Mossad is in like against the interest of the country. And yet it's still people just believe that it's always the Mossad because it's the official narrative and it's just easy to just go along with it.
So was it it's in the umbrella revolution you started to have these thoughts. It is interesting though that you had an issue with the term democracy when the specific thing that they were protesting for was the right to vote,
Yeah.
which is by its definition, a democratic protest.
Yeah. Well, except I found out by talking to people later that it wasn't. It wasn't because Hong Kong introduced a system of universal suffrage, which they've been negotiating for years and years, for a decade, in 2013. And it was kind of electoral college model, which you could, you had to have your candidates vetted. And we were all very much against this, saying this is an outrage. But in fact, the Hong Kong people, the adults, shall we say, were not against it. And in fact, more than 50% said we should go ahead with this. This is actually the best way, the only way that China will allow democracy. And even all the political parties agreed, including the Democratic Party. They said we should go ahead with this. And then there was a big fight within the Democratic Party, led by a guy called Ted Hui, who, of course, is very much in the news at the moment. And he said, no, we must fight this. We must only Western liberal democracy model can work. In fact, if you look back at it now, a lot of very, very pro-democracy academics and scholars say that was Hong Kong's massive mistake, because that would have introduced universal suffrage to Hong Kong. And the mistake was not listening to the wise people, to the people of Hong Kong, to the pro-China parties and to the Democratic Party, all of whom said the same thing, which is, this is good, we should take this step. It was a small cluster within the Democratic Party that complained
What is the
about it.
step, though?
the step was to allow universal suffrage, but to have an electoral college or committee to.
So
To be vetted.
you're saying the Democratic Party, they wanted the vetting process.
No, they agreed that this was a good step, and they would be in favour
But
of
within the Democratic Party, there was a smaller cluster that was against it.
it. Correct.
I'm certainly not an expert like you, but pretty sure the Umbrella Revolution was specifically against the vetting process.
Yes,
Right,
It was.
yeah.
It was, and yes, and I wrote articles against. I did a nice viral meme saying,
What did that have?
calling the vetting committee, choose your own puppet.
Yeah.
So I was definitely on the side of Ted Hoy and the anti then.
So it was post the Umbrella Revolution. You looked back at the Umbrella Revolution and decided that you were wrong about that.
yeah, and the average Hong Kong adult was right, and we westernized people who tended to follow the stirrers got it wrong.
How did that shift happen? Like just the realization, just introspective work? Like did you just reflect on the
Yeah.
time, or did you have more information that led you to believe that you were wrong at the time?
Yeah, it's talking to old Hong Kongers actually. So they said, look at what China has actually said about the vetting, and it was hilarious what they actually said. You know what the actual statement was? Persons chosen must love Hong Kong and must love China. That was the vetting process.
That's it?
That's
no,
it.
I mean,
No.
the vetting process, that's not the vetting process. The vetting process
Yeah.
was to only allow candidates that were pro-Beijing.
No, it wasn't. Those were the words used. And
Sure, but look at the outcome, though. I mean, if you
Yeah.
just fast forward a little bit,
Yeah.
when the protesters clearly understood what was being
yeah,
executed,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
have a look at now, when you have zero pro-democracy candidates now,
Yeah.
lawmakers in office, it doesn't sort of stand up that they were for it.
yeah. But the thing is, I mean, you've lived in China. You know Chinese code, right? So what the parents told me was, look at that sentence and work out what it means. Take off your Western glasses, put on your Chinese glasses.
Right.
Yeah.
And love Hong Kong and love China means one thing only.
You can only do what the Communist Party wants.
No, it means no separatists. No separatists. That's the only thing it means. Anybody
Sure.
except a separatist.
But not all pro-democratic, lawmakers are separatists.
Exactly. That's the point. Martin Lee said, I am not a separatist. Anson Chan, I'm not a separatist. All of them said they were pro-China and not separatists. The only separatists at that time, the people who would be banned by the committee, it was not the Democratic Party. It was tiny little groups of literally 5 or 6 people who were pro-independence then. Literally tiny. Those are the only people banned.
It does seem
Well,
like
not now. Now everybody's out. All the Democratic lawmakers are out.
Well, they've resigned, but yeah.
Well,
yeah,
they
but
were-
why would they resign? I mean, the
Yeah.
only reason they would resign is because they've come to the realization that they are just endorsing a system that they have no influence.
They also resigned in protest. They knew that their job is worthless right now, and
Yeah.
you're forced basically.
Do you think that the introduction of Xi Jinping as a president has changed the dynamic or the approach to Hong Kong?
Well, I mean, that's a whole big issue in itself.
Sure.
But, no, the thing is that what I found over the last couple of years is that Xi Jinping's people here are not interfering in the way that people think they are. In fact, the local Chinese, the CCP officials seem to be completely useless. I mean, I've never been approached by them, but a friend of mine was, and he said, "Oh, they're hopeless." So they're just
why does he think so?
completely caught on the hop. They don't know what to do.
Right.
All they do is put out the same statement again and
So they just
again.
want to keep their jobs basically and just doing whatever works.
Yeah, which is saying, we do not like the foreign meddling.
Right,
That's
yeah,
all they
yeah.
do every single day. And it's just like annoying and irritating. But they're not wrong.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as Mo kind of tapped into, I think the foreign meddling, And this was a big part of your book as well, right?
Yeah.
The CIA were involved. Can you speak to that a little bit and maybe give people a taste of what the book has?
Yeah, sure. So in 1986, the CIA decided to remodel their work in Asia, and they decided that people were onto them. So they set up these groups like the NED, National Endowment for Democracy, the NDI, and so on. They set up various groups that would sound nice, but would do exactly the same work as the CIA did, and just poison people's minds against their enemies, against perceived enemies of America. Not in favor of democracy. That was just a cover.
So you're talking about mostly like the NGOs and
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. Some were secret, some were public. So NED was the most public of them, but there were secret ones as well. And they did the work of the CIA. And over the years, many CIA people have eventually retired and written books and admitted all this. It's not a secret at all. William Casey said
it's 2020. Like you would expect it anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Whether it's the Russian interference or Chinese interference or American interference, this is how the world interacts now.
Yeah.
When there's a public event.
Yeah. So, but what we never knew was the extent of that interference and how it was ramped up. Like, for example, have you passed the American consulate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know she's the size of it?
Yeah.
Do you know how many people there are in most consulates in Hong Kong? 12, 20. You know how many people there are in the Chinese offices in Hong Kong? Maybe 200. Do you know how many people there are in the American consulate? Over 1,000. Okay.
What does that tell you, though?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think?
What does it tell you, Mo?
I mean, that's the same everywhere. That's my point. The American consulates and American embassies everywhere around the world are huge.
Yeah, the one in
Yeah,
Shanghai is massive.
It's massive. So is the one in Cairo. And obviously
it's almost a
extremely
whole, not a whole block, but it could be a whole block.
Yeah,
the
in
one
Cairo, it's
Shanghai.
like a fortress, basically. It's not just big. It's like extremely secure, and it's like there's like tanks and barbed wires and shit around
Right.
it.
Because these, in certain places, not everywhere, but in certain places, are used as intelligence bases. So the Hong Kong one was used as an intelligence base against against China, and the Taiwan is an intelligence and military base against China.
Well, it sounds very simplistic, though. When you have a political dilemma that you have in your country or in your place where you live, and the easiest thing to go, here's the Americans, they are the bad ones. Does that make sense in your head that it's just easy to blame the Americans?
Yeah, but it's not like that, is it? It's you send millions of dollars to one city in a period of a few months. One of the things they admitted doing was setting up the police-proof communication system for the radicals, right? Now, just imagine if I went to your country and said, we're going to spend millions on a police-proof system so that people fighting the police can be completely secure, can't be intercepted. And what's more, we're going to put staff there to maintain it on a daily basis in your country.
That
in
sounds
Melbourne.
very much like something China does.
Yeah,
in
that's
Africa.
exactly what I was thinking. I'm like,
And
it's like they're doing it to the
They are
people that are doing it to them.
Exactly. They're doing it in most of the African countries.
Oh, in Australia,
In fact, like not just with the technological infrastructure, but also, in fact, sometimes it's not supporting the radicals, it's supporting the dictatorships that are crushing their own people.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that
China.
obviously you don't need examples to see like that in many African countries.
So you would think that when you're talking about the two superpowers in the world, given that it's pretty common knowledge that both of them are doing it all over the world, it doesn't really surprise me that much that the American embassy, if I had to guess, I would have said the consulate was the most staffed out of all of them here.
Yeah. So why does every mainstream paper deny this and not investigate this? It's 1 inch under the surface. Why did the New York Times say, like all the others, it says, the idea of foreign interference is just a shop-worn canard that the Beijing government always churns out.
Yeah,
that was the point that every mainstream paper said.
As a layperson, if I had to guess, I would say, is it news? You know, it's not news. I mean, everybody knows about it.
Everyone knows about it. Everyone does it.
And then also, if they could have 1,000 people, they could have 2,000 people. But what stood out was just the massive portion of the Hong Kong population that clearly believed in that cause.
Yes, but what did they believe? What were they told?
Well,
I was there at the protest interviewing people. They were told that a system was being introduced that would snatch dissidents and move them to China.
Was it not?
It wasn't.
Well, what about the booksellers?
at
What
all.
about the booksellers that were snatched?
That's a separate issue. That's snatching. That's
What? It's the same
no,
issue.
it's not. It's addition. That's rendition. That's extraordinary rendition, which was invented by who? Which is specialty of who?
Grabbing people from another country. I mean,
It's a
I
specialty of
America,
the
yeah.
USA, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
China does it very badly occasionally. Mossad and
Frequently.
the US does it
Yeah.
does it frequently and very, very well.
They
China,
do it very well. I was just reading today
Yeah,
about the nuclear scientist who just got assassinated in
Yes.
Iran. I don't know if you know this. I told you about him.
I
but
thought they were saying the Israelis did it.
they're accusing the Mossad, but just today in the morning, the BBC said it was done through a a satellite-controlled machine gun on a car.
Wow.
It's like the movies. Like
Yeah.
it was a machine gun on a car by his convoy.
That's interesting.
It had a camera on it, and they just got him without his wife. It was extremely surgical.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
how they know. It's obviously intelligence work.
exactly. And look, let me ask you a question then. Why this clumsy thing with the booksellers? Why is that repeated a million times? Whereas
It's
operation
terrifying.
after
It's
operation after
terrifying.
operation after operation by the US is just, oh well, that's what they do, the Americans.
Well,
Okay.
I would answer that question
what
by
other
saying.
cases can you quote other than the booksellers? Give me 50 more.
No, okay.
Well, the thing is that I assume we don't know most of them. Why would we know most
because
of them?
they are happening secretly because they're so good. They're even better than the Americans.
No,
So
I mean,
what
they're-
you're saying
they're
is that-
useless. They're
Yeah,
useless.
What you're saying is that they're bad at their job.
Exactly.
And because of that, if it does happen, we will know about it.
I think that
they're
doesn't
terrible
really
at this.
You're
snatching.
talking. You're just to be specific. You're talking about the Chinese intelligence. They're not good at that. And if they were, more of them would be happening.
I mean,
is
it's
that
just,
what you're
there's
saying?
no way that we could know the breadth of how much of it goes on, you know,
Yeah.
because it's not publicly reported.
Except this is one city. This is not a country. This is a city.
Right.
If you lose 100 people or 10 people in a city, you would know. If you lose 6 people in a murder at Prince Edward Station, you would know. I've been a crime reporter here. If you lose 2 people in Hong Kong, you would know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the point of it, though, is the significance to the people that were protesting, right? They're saying there's this law that's being introduced where people can be taken into the mainland to be tried.
Not true.
Okay,
Well-
what is true?
It was an extradition law from the UN, drafted and commissioned by the G7 to return mainland criminals to the mainland. And read the text.
Is that
Just
different
read
to
the
what I
text.
said?
Yes, it doesn't snatch people from Hong Kong,
But-
it returns people who've committed crimes in the mainland. Now, what do we
no,
know
no,
about
that- that's not
let's
right.
Stop there. Let's stop there because you're saying people who are committed crimes in the mainland.
But that's not right.
Previously, you just said people from the mainland in Hong Kong to return to the mainland, which is 2 different statements.
It's also the China, the law as it's drafted allows China to grab anyone who has who has violated a law of mainland China, not necessarily in mainland
exactly.
Wrong, you haven't read it.
China. Okay, I'm pretty confident that that's incorrect. But let's look at the purpose of the law, right? The purpose of the law was to return someone who'd committed a crime in Taiwan
Yeah, 1 of 37 crimes.
to
yeah.
Hong Kong.
Yeah.
They didn't commit it in Hong Kong. That law wouldn't achieve the stated aim.
No. Let me tell you the full story, right?
Okay.
Okay. So every westernized modern country, urbanized country, has extradition laws. We belong, Hong Kong and all
Less
the modern
and less
countries.
so these days.
Yeah, we belong to a
wonder why.
G7 financial committee.
Yeah.
And they said that Hong Kong is by far the most law-abiding place in Asia, but it's missing extradition laws. And please fix it. And so they introduced a UN-drafted extradition law at the request of the G7 FATF committee. And that was then labeled, imposed by China to snatch people. But it wasn't. In fact, we have a long process of cooperation between Hong Kong and China on legal cases. It's been going for 25 years. The British set it up.
Yeah, it seems that the people of Hong Kong don't have your level of confidence in that. But I think that
Here you go again, the people of Hong Kong. The Democrats are not the people of Hong Kong. This is a city with a broad range of views. 1 in 4 people, roughly, support the Democrats. What about the three out of 4? What
Okay,
about the rest of us?
so-
I'm fed up with people like you saying the people
let
of
me
Hong
bring
Kong.
some numbers to it. Okay, so Reuters said that 59% of Hong Kong residents support the protest movement, which is a significant majority.
Yeah, okay, look, but then I can just throw back other surveys. You can throw back surveys, right? So,
But
yeah.
on what basis don't
Where
you
does that
believe
survey come from? That-
Reuters.
Yeah, but which survey is it? Is it Pori?
I
think
need
it's
to.
Pori.
I've got it down as Reuters. I'm looking at the notes off my phone, so I can.
So they
I can
tend
give
to
it
quote Pori, right?
Yeah.
Which is a public, which has never been known to find a result in favour of the government, right? So yeah, so there are many surveys with different things, but it was the Chinese university survey which said that 55% supported the government's plan for universal suffrage. That was a Chinese university survey.
But that's not
technically.
well, I wonder
nearly
what
always
the time of that
anti-government.
was, and that's also not like this was. We're talking about the protest now. When was that survey taken?
Okay, just go by numbers of Hong Kong people. How many people live in Hong Kong?
7.5 million.
Yeah. So in the last election, how many people voted for the Democrats? 1.6 million.
Are you talking about
How
the
many
district
voted-
council
yeah,
elections?
district council, 1.6 million. How many voted for the other side at the previous district? So roughly the same, right?
Okay.
So just let's do general figures to avoid these biased surveys. General figures. I've been reporting for LegCo for 30 years, right? General figures. About a quarter of Hong Kong people are anti-China, or tend to vote for the China hostile parties.
Okay.
About a quarter vote for the China friendly parties. About a half, or little more than a half, don't vote at all. They're just basically apolitical.
Right.
Those are the figures. They've been consistent since the 80s.
So we can
And
say
they're still consistent
there's a,
today.
So we can say at worst there's a pretty even split.
So a quarter.
According
and
to
then-
your numbers.
yeah.
Right,
The
yeah.
apoliticals are by far the biggest, and then a quarter for each of the others. But if you read the media, the mainstream media, they say the people of Hong Kong, and they always refer to the quarter, never
But
to the other
so
three.
does the other side. You also say the people of Hong Kong.
Yes, they're
Yeah,
both wrong.
they
Well,
hit the silent majority.
The
which
silent,
is this-
which actually includes the 50% that you just said are apolitical. Those are
Exactly.
usually taken in the count of the pro-government side.
exactly, they're both
Why?
wrong
Yeah,
because
okay.
most people are apolitical. More people don't vote than do vote.
Right.
But why
been
would you?
consistent
But
for 30
why would you
years.
assume that they're pro-China though?
But I don't. You do.
No, actually, honestly,
Well, you're saying that people do, but I don't.
no,
that's
I'm
right.
trying to get
Look at Anthony Dapiran. Anthony Dapiran says, the vote shows that the silent majority are with us. You know, he said that, right?
Well, you've got
But you can't quote the silent. The only thing you can say about the people who don't vote, who don't
Is that
employ
they
their
don't vote.
is that they don't employ their
No,
democratic vote.
you're right about that.
What does that imply?
Well, I would say that when you've got a situation,
What does that
so you've got. Let me try and answer
Yeah.
that question. So you've got the pro-democracy movement gained control of 17 of 18 councils.
Yeah, but
right?
that's because of the system, isn't it? Look at the
What
numbers. It's the first past the post
yes,
system.
okay,
some got in by literally one vote.
Sure.
So the numbers
Obviously-
are more honest than the
obviously there's more people voting on that side than the other side. We
slightly,
can agree
yeah,
on
yeah,
that
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And
So 1.6 versus 1.2. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
but why people? And I think you've kind of touched on this. Is people understand that it is inevitable that China will take over. It's inevitable that there will be no voting. That there will be one party. And I think that there's a big incentive for people to not be involved in a fight they know they can't win. And you're not talking about a balanced political system where one side can literally just arrest the other side on pretty spurious charges to the point where the entire one political side says our participation in this is moot.
Except the lawyers of Hong Kong say that they have a Western level of trustability in law, And so do the world's lawyers, so do the global lawyers. In surveys of the trustability of the Hong Kong judiciary, Hong Kong scores above many Western countries. It scores above all Asian countries. Okay, so you're saying, they arrest people on spurious grounds.
Well, the judiciary is quite is holding a position in opposition of Beijing at this point on many fronts.
Which is a sign of independent judiciary.
Sure,
Do you
but
think
how
that-
long
well,
is that going to last?
Let's just
let's talk about what
look
might
at the
happen
mainland
in the future.
No, but look at the main. Well, it's easy to
do
not
that,
a question.
isn't it?
It's easy to know what's going to happen
Yeah.
because in mainland China, the legal system, the judiciary, are required ahead of justice to serve the needs and the desires of the party. That's part of their mandate.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the inevitability for the judiciary in Hong Kong. So.
No.
Well, tell me, where am I wrong?
Well, how has Chinese law developed over the last 30 years?
That's a pretty broad question.
Okay, right. Talk to somebody who's watched it develop. It's really interesting, right? So it's developing a bit like the Japanese system.
Are we talking about in Hong Kong or in mainland
No,
China?
mainland China?
mainland,
Yeah, I mean, in mainland
So
China...
it's astonishing. I mean, look at the legal aid there. The legal aid system is better than in most other countries.
Oh,
well,
no,
how,
I'm sorry,
how
that
high
is-
is the conviction rate in China?
It's the same as Japan's, right?
I think if we look at the global perspective, and there's really no argument to say that the judiciary in mainland China has any credibility whatsoever. I mean, they are an arm of the government that has a 99% conviction rate. People don't have rights. It's to say that they have credibility in their system. In fact, the mandate of judges is such that justice is a sixth priority in how they execute judgments.
What's the conviction rate in Japan?
No, okay. Let me stop you here because I also did in my research on you. You have obviously a bunch of public statements. One of them in a tweet in April 10th, 2019. You go facepalm. I'm a pro-democracy Hong Kong journal, but I can't let your ridiculous statement go unchallenged. Hong Kong fugitive offenders law is milder than the U.S. equivalent, and you're doing the same thing now. Most of your arguments, your public arguments, are whataboutism.
No, it's not.
It is.
No?
Because you just said now, we're talking about the Chinese judicial system, and you immediately went, what about Japan?
No,
and this is the same thing.
No,
when people are...
Mate, let's take a breath. Let's take a breath. I think the conviction rate of Japan... What is the conviction rate of Japan? I don't know.
It's 99.9.
Yeah.
There you go.
But it's not. You see, comparison is a legitimate tool.
I agree with that.
Because
I agree with
it
you.
shows that you're
No,
biased.
I agree with your point.
Because you're
Comparison
not
is
saying...
whataboutism is not.
Yeah, that's not
Tone
the
it
same
down.
thing. Whataboutism and comparison are not the same thing.
Okay.
I think it's
Whataboutism is when you
I agree with
diverge.
I agree with you. So I'm agreeing with you. Just so you know, I'm
Yeah.
not disagreeing with that point.
Comparison is a tool of
Sure.
logical argument.
Sure.
Yeah, but as someone that's lived in Shanghai for 10 years and seen how the courts work, you win based on the power that you hold. That's it. There's just no question about it. And I can tell you
Personal stories.
a litany of examples of people who have been put in a position where they're being countersued or they're suing someone who has government connections. That doesn't go to court. Doesn't go to court because it's unwinnable, because they don't have a credible justice system.
Look, China has a terrible justice system.
Yeah, so we
Right?
agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's trying to grow a proper one. And what's happening is the Hong Kong judicial system is constantly sending people over there to try and teach people. So there's constant conferences there. And what's happening? It's working. For the last 30 years, it's been working.
What's
For the last
working
25
exactly though? Just specifically, could you
It's been developing, like for example, a legal aid system. All these systems are being introduced. For the last 30 years, umpteen new systems have been introduced. So it's changing, but you just dismiss it with a wave of your hand.
No,
And
I'm
it's
not. I'm giving specific examples that represent how problematic and unjust it is.
Yeah. Yeah, unlike the US system.
The U.S. judicial
Here we
system.
go again.
No, but
You see comparison.
But if you are
The US
a ci-
system,
if
of
you are a
course, is
citizen
all
of
about
the US,
justice.
if you are in the US, you can go to court, you can hire a lawyer, and you can win. And that's not available to people in China.
Yeah. I also, side note, this is a bit of an emotional topic for me because I come from a country where the government narrative for the last 60 years has always been, at least we're not Syria or Iraq. So it's very sensitive for me. Like there's a completely fucked up corrupt system, and every time we criticize the government, they go like, well, it's us or Syria.
Yeah, and it's also not an either-or question.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
America can have problems, and that doesn't need to influence our decision as to whether this is a good thing for Hong Kong or a bad thing for Hong Kong.
That's it.
And my question, I guess, to you, who's someone I believe loves this city, what's good for Hong Kong?
Yeah. What's good for Hong Kong is to listen to the people, not to a minority group which demonizes everybody else.
But I
And
think you made a
listen-
really good point, though, about when you have such a split between opinions, like a dramatically, spectrum opposite opinion, and then you've got
Silent
a
majority.
silent majority of who knows what they really think, and
We
as
don't
you
value
say,
their democratic vote because they don't practice it.
yeah, but why would they not value it? Because it's been proven to be useless. Why vote for a party?
Now you're attaching things to the silent majority.
No, there's no one pro-democratic in office right now that's to vote for them would have been useless. It would have been if you'd predicted that as an outcome, you would have been right. And generally, in countries that don't have compulsory voting anyway, voting is not. It's uncommon. I come from Australia, so like we have compulsory voting, so we get high voter turnouts. But generally speaking, when you're in a non-compulsory voting system, you don't get blowout numbers.
Okay. Well, look. Am I allowed to mention my own community without you saying, what about is it?
Okay,
Absolutely,
sure,
I
go
want to
ahead.
hear about it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
okay.
I really
Right.
don't want you to feel attacked.
Yeah.
I want to hear your opinion,
Okay.
but I also
Okay, let's take South Asia, my community, right?
Sure.
My original community, right? So we've got South Asia, 1.4 billion people. We've got China, 1.4 billion people, right? Okay. One follows your system. One follows state capitalism. Okay. In one system, hundreds of millions of men, women, and children are starving. In the other system, they're not. Poverty has been eliminated. Now, one of my good friends was in charge of the hunger program for the World Bank. He every year flies around the world arranging hunger programs. Now 30 years ago, maybe not 30 years, maybe 28 years ago, when I was very much a member of the Democratic Party here,
yeah.
he came to see me and he said, you can't believe what's happening. We're cutting all our hunger programs in China. It's unbelievable what they're doing there. Now, you might talk about politics all you like, but 800 million men, women, and children were lifted out of poverty by what? By not choosing the democracy that India chose, that my people chose, by choosing state capitalism.
Do you think there are other explanations as to why India might have had a different path?
Well, that's the main problem. You can't get anything done in India because of the layers of democracy, the layers of voting, the layers of
it's
political
bureaucratic.
parties.
It's not
I was
necessarily
about to say,
democracy.
is
It's
it-
no, it's not necessarily a democratic issue. I think, there
also
are
corruption, isn't
other
it?
massive
Yep,
differences
absolutely.
between India and China.
Yeah.
One of the obvious ones is that China is far more homogenous than India. India.
Well, look at Indonesia then. It's almost the third largest. Look at the Philippines. Look at any Asian country which has chosen a Western democracy style. They all have failed to develop.
So is this the key point that made you change your mind?
Well, what? No. It was listening to wiser older people who said, "Look what counts. It's hungry people are being given, are being lifted from poverty."
Well, see, that's a little bit of a change because before you were saying is that they're okay with the vetting process and that they think that this is good, but now you're saying the whole democratic process is useless.
No, I'm saying look a bit more deeply and don't go for the simple thing as democracy good,
Sure.
other system evil.
Well, I could say let's find a simple point of agreement, right? Like we could say police brutality is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And does it concern you the level to which that escalated, during the protests last year?
You know, I mean, this is you put these big subjects out there.
Well, I mean,
But that's
I feel like
a-
it's a
it's
little
a big topic.
A little
That's
bit
a big
smaller
topic.
than comparing
That's a big
India to
topic.
China and what the
Yeah.
difference is.
Okay,
I feel like we
well,
just scaled down dramatically,
Okay,
actually.
Okay. Well, let me answer that with one question. So, a group of us dads, if you
Yeah,
like,
sure.
we
Right.
got together, right,
Yeah.
to look at police brutality. And it was easy.
Is this an actual thing that happened, or are you just doing a
it's in here,
hypothetical?
it's in
Right,
here,
okay,
it's in
great,
here.
great.
Ah, okay.
So we got all the.
Are you
all the
gonna
stuff.
tell people it's in the book? You're pointing at the book.
Yeah,
You're like,
that's
it's in
right.
here, like it's in your
Yeah.
head.
It's in the book. Yeah.
But please also, this
Yeah.
is an opportunity for you to tell us,
Yeah,
what's in
yeah.
the book. So don't feel like you can't run with that.
Yeah. So anyway, so we got together, said, let's
Yeah.
look at the police brutality, because all of us had examples in our heads we'd seen that we were shocked at.
Yeah.
You know, the guy, for me, it was the guy on the ground with the policeman's boot on his head. You know, we said, this is shocking. Let's look at these. And so we collected a gazillion pictures. What we found was that nearly all the police brutality pictures were stills. And stills don't tell you anything, right? You know that, because it depends on the angle. It can tell you a different story depending on the angle. So then we collected the videos, and the videos were interesting. They'd all been snipped into 10-second or 5-second segments. So then we thought, okay, that's also not very good. So we looked at the full videos, and what we saw was something. We saw the police would make a dispersal area using tear gas, usually,
Right.
or just loudspeakers.
And that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
So throwing tear gas is okay.
that's
At the level that it was thrown, that's okay.
that's the British system. Use tear.
Not to the level that it was done in Hong Kong.
Yes,
I think the use of tear gas in Hong Kong far exceeded
wrong. 1967, they used the same level, and the British government.
Here, that I actually know that that's not right. Here they vastly exceeded the use of tear gas that had ever been used in the city. I can get the stat for you, but that is not factually correct.
Okay, look. Okay, let's go back to the
But
question.
but it
Okay.
is the question. We're talking about police brutality, and,
Yeah.
and you've just carved off
Okay.
the use of tear gas as a kind of brutality, and I just want to put it back on the table and say that is part of the police brutality.
Okay,
As someone that was tear gassed
Okay.
at work, he got tear gas in his apartment.
I got evacuated out of my house
I
because
think
there was
that's a
so much
pretty
tear gas in the
Okay,
significant-
house.
let's talk about one thing at a time.
Sure.
we're talking
Police
about police
brutality.
brutality. That's
Yeah.
I'm saying
Okay,
that
let's-
is police brutality.
Okay, so police
Tear
have.
gassing people who haven't done anything wrong is police brutality.
There are two systems that's how the police works everywhere, right?
Sure.
There are two systems. There's what they call the non-lethal cabinet and the lethal cabinet,
Sure.
right? In America, they go straight for the lethal cabinet,
Yeah,
as we all
yeah.
know, right? In UK and Hong Kong, they go for the non-lethal cabinet, right?
Okay.
Now, what you're saying is that the tear gas belongs in the brutality cabinet, and what I'm saying is they actually use it.
you
there is
used the
no
word- you
brutality
just-
cabinet. You just switched words.
You switched the word lethal to brutality.
Okay,
Right.
Okay, so they use a Western system of dispersion.
But calling it a Western system doesn't change the physical consequence of using an enormous amount of tear gas.
Okay, I'm talking about one day. I'm talking about June the 12th.
Sure.
One afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so they ask people to disperse. Some do, most do. A lot of peaceful protesters like me, we disperse. A group doesn't, right? Some don't, right? And then what happens? There's something weird going on. One protester will march into the central area and stay there. The police will use the megaphones. Get back to behind the line. They use it again and again. The guy won't move. Why? And this is get back or we'll move you. Then the police come and grab him. Then 1,000 cameras go off. Then he struggles. He struggles crazily. Why is he struggling so crazily? That 10-second snip goes everywhere. Now, this whole process is written up with instructions in the professional consultant's book of overturning governments. It's all there.
Okay, so just so I understand your point, the police brutality that happened in Hong Kong was purely
Not
just
purely, but many examples. So
how many
looked-
examples, like percentage basis, like
Yeah.
1%?
Yeah.
Or
So what we
90%?
found, this is the parents' committee. What we found was that there were actually very few examples. We found a few where the police would push people or would walk
Can I
past and
ask
go,
what is the
They found
worst
a few-
example of police brutality that you have seen and you went, okay, that's bad?
oh, there were many. Maybe
Okay.
6.
But they were all
7 really bad ones.
And of those, they were all CIA related, your conclusion?
No, there were about 6 or 7 where the police officer just really lost it and behaved really badly. But out of
None of whom have received any consequences.
there were more than 100 police what they call had notified cases. But anyway, we're talking about numbers here. There were 6 like really bad ones we found, right? Out of 130 days of multiple fighting. That's a lower level than you find in European protests.
Oh, sure.
Much lower. Much lower.
The violence was
violence
low.
level is much higher in other protests around the world.
I agree
much
with that.
lower than
Yeah,
Hong Kong.
absolutely.
So, but you look up police brutality on Google and you find only Hong Kong in the first page.
Well, that's because you're in Google.
Yeah, exactly.
You're in
That's
Hong
because
Kong.
you're looking up from
If you
here.
go to another country and search it, you'll get a different result.
I assume if you go to a random country, you'll get mostly from the US as
that's
well.
how Google works.
But anyway,
Yeah.
so we did look at this very seriously, and we all had complaints, and we found that police brutality was not actually the major issue that people.
So your conclusion was that police brutality is not a big issue for Hong Kong.
It's no different to other places. And
Well, that's not my question.
Probably less.
That wasn't my question. My question wasn't how does it compare to other places. My question was,
It wasn't. No,
let me put it out
It's
there.
no different. I'll answer that and say it's no different.
Quite possibly, police brutality is a problem in most countries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you?
But that
okay,
doesn't,
with this
but
level,
that doesn't diminish the fact that 76% of Hong Kongers, or 74%, wanted an independent inquiry into police brutality because it was so bad during the protest.
Yeah, this is is it a no, okay.
It's Reuters as well.
Survey.
Well,
Right,
I
right.
think you can agree that a lot of people were upset about the police brutality. Is that a fair statement or no?
Yeah, I was among them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you subsequently concluded that it wasn't a big deal.
Okay, let me throw one back at you. There are so many reports about police attacking peaceful protesters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why could we not find one video of that? Not one.
Of people
Of what?
attacking police?
Of police attacking a group of peaceful protesters.
Oh, I have one.
I
for
saw
you.
plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
There is
sent
a
it to you.
famous
Send
one
them to me?
Well, I will. I mean, I don't need to send it to you because you probably saw it. It's the officer on the motorcycle, basically trying to kill a bunch of protesters on
Yeah.
the street.
Yeah, no.
This one was ugly, and I don't know if you have an explanation for it or if you have seen a longer video. But
Yeah.
please.
No. That's definitely a case of the police guy
By the
losing
way,
it.
you can also prove me, tell me if I'm wrong. That officer got, I think, suspended for a while and went back to work.
The
This
next
officer
week.
was not on trial at all.
No,
And I think-
none of the police were charged.
No, none of the police, but this officer in particular, because it leaves to me as a layman, I look at it, I'm like, this is attempted murder. This is a bunch of people on the street who are, let's say they're protesting, let's say illegally.
Yeah.
He's on his motorcycle, which is basically a weapon. He's trying to run them over again and again. And this officer was not charged with anything. What do you think of that? Just
Well,
even
I-
as a separate incident.
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of instances. I haven't investigated that one, so I don't want to comment on something I haven't looked at.
Sure. Yeah. So, I have a question. Do you think that if you were comfortable with the level of involvement from the CIA, I assume that would be nothing.
Yeah.
Do you think that this movement then suddenly doesn't exist? That the emotion of the Hong
So
Kong
the
people
CIA
represented would then not exist?
So the CIA were poisoning people's minds for decades.
But what does poisoning mean? I mean,
decades? They was.
if you say
let
they're
me give you an example. Okay.
You say they're poisoning. In what way was the Hong Kong people that were protesting invalidated by said poisoning? How did the poisoning invalidate their position?
Like for example, they were told that dissidents, that the Democrats, would be deported to China.
They've been locked up pretty broadly.
Yeah, but the law says very specifically that nobody on any political charge, as determined by the Hong Kong judiciary, would be allowed. Would this law would apply to them? So basically, no members of the Democratic Party could. This law could not apply to any of them. Full stop.
Well,
Start
the
with.
Democratic Party are being arrested. You know,
No. I'm talking about this law.
Sure,
the law
but-
says
but-
specifically, but the people weren't told
the
that.
people protesting,
Yeah.
to them, Hong Kong government acting on behalf of Beijing and
the G7,
Beijing.
yeah, you call it Beijing. I call it the G7. Go
Why
on.
G7? It's just Beijing. The G7 doesn't support this.
No, G7 asked the Hong Kong judiciary to introduce the extradition law. Beijing was not involved at all.
Yeah, I mean, the law was a reinvention of Article 23 anyway, you know.
Extradition law?
Certainly,
not
certainly.
at all.
Well-
Have you read the two? Not at all.
Yeah, okay. So,
Article
let me
23
ask
was
this.
written by
how
the
does
British.
How does the national security law stack up with Article 23?
National security law.
Yeah.
Well, now you're going to hate me saying this, but it's much milder than most. Every country has national security laws, and ours is milder than America's, like a million times.
Right.
But other countries don't have one country, two systems.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we.
So that's why it's different.
Yeah. But the British wrote Article 23, right? You agree with me that?
I don't know how that changes the significance of it, though. I mean, if the British were the first person to murder someone, it doesn't mean murder is subsequently okay.
No.
I mean, that has been my logic the entire argument.
No. The British wrote it, but they said,
it doesn't make them
If the
good,
British
though.
wrote, "Hey, kill those people,"
Yeah.
they're just like, well, the British wrote it.
Yeah,
so.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm getting back at
it's
what
the
you said, which
substance
the NSL was a version of Article 23.
So what?
So,
I mean, the point is
so
that we're
what's the
looking at
point?
it
No,
as-
I want to hear.
Okay.
So
Right.
what was the point to that?
Right. Imagine a tray of cutlery, right? Every country has the same tray of cutlery.
I love this analogy
including
already.
a spoon, right?
Yeah.
A spoon is part. Every country has a national security law, right, of one sort or another.
Yeah.
Right? Now you're saying Hong Kong is not allowed a spoon. Every country can have one, but no spoons allowed in Hong Kong.
That's a very narrow analysis because a country has a national security law that applies to the nation, but this is a situation where you have 2 million people in the street protesting, asking
There
for...
weren't 2 million people in the street.
Oh, do you have numbers on that? How many people are in the street?
Well, I'll put it this way.
The police said it was 338,000, so it's definitely more than that.
Okay. Let's not go into another big subject.
No,
but
I
there's a
think
whole
it's-
chapter in there on crowd analysis.
Okay. So let's just say there were a
lot.
lot of people in the
Yes,
street.
yes. I was there. I was
And
among
at
them.
that point, when you have people protesting against this law and the government not responding, to then enact a national security law, and the day it is enacted, start arresting people in the street for clearly very minor offences. And I know that no one's been tried yet. You've got the police.
How many people have been arrested? Have been charged under NSL?
No one yet, I believe, or they haven't
Three.
acted. They haven't. It hasn't
Three.
completed the trial, right?
No, 3 people have been charged.
Sure, but
How many people have been charged under everybody else's NSL?
It's a different time frame. You can't compare.
No,
it.
everybody else is in the world.
You can't
God.
compare it. It's a totally
Okay.
different time frame.
Everybody in the planet, in the universe, how many people
It's
have been charged with
a brand
NSLs?
new law.
Which is the least? No, in the same time frame over the last 6 months.
How could it?
Last
Well,
4
the
months.
last 6
It's
months
also-
is not significant in other places. It wasn't just enacted.
You can also think of like what is happening in these 6 months. If
Yeah.
everything is
So
if the
you've got a
political climate
situation
is
where
normal.
the police are on Twitter bragging about grabbing people for holding up a sign in the street. Now, at what point are we just ignoring what a lot of people in this city want? Like there seems to be a consistent process of devaluing the size of the crowd, the percentage of people that
It's
are voting.
exactly the opposite. It's
significance of
exactly the
police
opposite. It's
brutality.
exactly the opposite.
Do you feel that your point of view does lean in the same direction on every point that you're analysing?
No, I think yours does, though. Yours clearly does, because you can just...
No, I don't know. I'm
you
an
can
idiot.
just- no,
I don't
you
know
can
anything.
Just, you can
tell
just
me, I
wind
wanna
back
know.
the tape, listeners. Just wind back, and you can hear...
I don't edit. This is all going in. Don't
Okay.
worry.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
you can hear you say talking about the people of Hong Kong and implying that the people want one
he
thing
did
when
say
in fact
a
it's
big
a min-
number. He didn't even
I
say
mean, you
the
can take
majority
away
or
earlier,
half.
If
earlier,
it makes you
earlier,
happier,
you
I'll
said
put
the
it on
people.
record to take away the word "the" and say "people in Hong Kong."
Well, there's a difference in the people of Hong Kong and people in Hong Kong.
It's rhetoric, but a significant number of people
Yes.
we agree
Right.
are
Yes.
in that camp.
Yes.
So
Correct.
You know, what if you're wrong? You know, do you? What if maybe Beijing isn't so benevolent in the approach that they have to Hong Kong?
Okay, another big issue, which is like going doing.
Well, you've just put out a book that
Yeah.
covers it, so I assume
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
thought about it. You know, do you? It seems to me like you're taking you're putting your trust in the mainland Chinese system ahead of the democratic system. Is that a fair statement?
No,
If I'm
absolutely not. Absolutely
Okay.
not.
Okay, so then I've misunderstood you.
Yeah. Okay. The book barely mentions the Beijing officials, and when it
Oh
does,
no, I meant in the
it's-
conversation
yeah,
we had now.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. So I'm not a fan of the Beijing government. I'm not a fan of the CCP. I'm not a fan of the officials here. I'm not a fan of the Hong Kong government. Okay, so I'm not speaking up for any of those.
Now I'm listening.
Okay, I'm a fan of the Hong Kong people.
Sure.
I don't want.
Oh, the people.
Yes,
Call me out on saying the people.
Yeah, no. I mean the people, meaning the whole people. The
Right.
whole
Okay.
group.
Fair.
And I believe, unlike many of the mainstream media, I believe that the Hong Kong people have a broad range of views. They don't all hate Beijing. They don't all hate
I
CCP.
agree
They're
with
not
that.
all
Yeah.
terrified.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's clearly true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's
let's
clearly
not
true.
say that the people of Hong Kong are protesting, are rebels against China.
No, this
You
is
know,
something
so
I
many
think all of
mainstream-
us can
I think
agree.
maybe I appreciate that it sounds like I'm making that statement, but I certainly have no intention to deny the fact that a huge number of people in Hong Kong are totally fine with Beijing and the direction
Well,
that they
not
want
so-
to
I
take
don't
things
think,
in.
no, I don't think they're totally fine. I think it's much more
On balance.
subtle. No,
Yeah.
I think they're not naive. They know China's problems. They know China's legal system problems. But they're also not in favor of fighting a battle they can't possibly
Yeah, I
win.
agree, but isn't
Yeah.
that isn't
This
that
is the
miserable?
middle section.
Yeah,
But
there is-
how miserable is that? That they are only not fighting because
Yeah.
they know they can't win.
No, but it's not. They're not miserable. Talk to them.
No, but that I'm saying isn't that dynamic
Yeah.
miserable?
No, I think the people in the middle are the majority. They're apolitical. They're not at either extreme. They don't hate Beijing. They don't hate the protesters. They don't hate the police. They don't hate the radicals.
They just
They're-
want to
they-
get by with their lives.
They want to. They love Hong Kong. They see what's happening in China. They see what's happening in China. It's actually very good for Hong Kong. They don't like the people stirring up the trouble, which I think
Yeah, and I understand
Is-
that. I mean, brutality is
canvas.
brutality, police, whatever.
Is-
understandably, people
the
just have an issue
AIE
with that.
is
yeah,
is these European groups, this Oslo Foundation.
yeah. I mean,
Well, Oslo Foundation is based in New York now, but
I don't know if we really covered it off, but do you think that in absence of the CIA, the people of Hong Kong would have been, had no reason to protest?
it's not just that. No. I mean, no. We protested for 30 years.
Sure, like
Yeah,
the CIA didn't teach Hong. Well, I don't know. Hong Kong has got a history of protesting that extends far beyond
Yes,
this
yes.
issue. Do you
Yeah.
not think that there would have been a protest,
Yeah.
but for the CIA?
No, we
So
protested.
what was the
yeah,
difference
yeah.
in your mind?
You know who marched with us in '89, May '89, the first great protest? You know who we were marching with?
How many people were there that
Staff.
day? 1 million?
Officially 1.5 million, but it was probably about 400,000 or so. But
Okay.
you know who I was marching with? This is the staff of Xinhua,
Huh.
the Chinese government staff.
Yeah.
They marched with us. That's what happened before. So you can see how we've been pushed apart.
What's your take on Tiananmen Square now? Has it changed?
Well, I believe the academic version, the Western and Eastern academics both agree on what happened in Tiananmen Square, which is very different from what the media says.
Right.
So I go with the academic version,
Which is?
which is that there were hundreds of deaths. Both sides agree, the Beijing academics and the Western academics, hundreds of deaths, and not in Tiananmen Square. They're in a place called Mishuti, to the west of Beijing. And you can see slowly their version is emerging, because there was a one-word change in The Economist a few weeks ago that made me so happy. It was a reference to Tiananmen Square, and instead of the usual Tiananmen Square massacre, it said hundreds killed near Tiananmen Square. One word
Sure.
change. Took 30 years to make that change.
Does the proximity to the square change the significance of the event?
Well, it happened 4 kilometers away, most of the deaths. And most of the deaths weren't students. The largest number of deaths were workers, and the second largest were soldiers. The students were third and were relatively small in number.
Where the
Yeah,
workers...
but say for example, we talk in the news about the underpants bomber. Now, if it turned out the bomb was, halfway down his knee,
Yeah.
Does that have any impact on the significance
No,
of the
no,
event?
of course not. Of course not.
Right.
But it just means that the whole myth of the Tiananmen Square machine gunning. I mean, they had no machine guns to start.
Yeah, I don't know that machine gunning is significant, but there's certainly video online of crowds being shot at in large numbers.
Where?
YouTube? I sent
No,
you a
no,
link.
no, no. Where in
Well,
Beijing?
let's say in Beijing. Let's
Beijing,
not
yeah,
let's
yeah.
not argue the semantics or where the
You know,
location is.
because
In
also you got to
Beijing.
understand
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
as a reporter, you know, you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to have a reference so people know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
start calling it the between 4th and 5th Street massacre,
Right.
people might think you're talking about something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What were the song that the students were singing in
In
the Tiananmen
1989,
Square?
I was 6 years old at the
Oh,
time
right,
in
right.
Australia. So
I was not
Yeah.
born yet.
I didn't hear
Yeah,
it.
they were singing "March On." They were singing the Chinese national anthem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and when people, I'd say this to people, they're kind of surprised, thinking, "What?" They were singing the Chinese national anthem
Well,
continuously.
I don't think there was any indication that they didn't love their country.
Right, and that's
What
always
were
the
they
case in
calling
a lot of
for?
places, like in a protest in a country. And again, my reference is my own country. When we were protesting in Tahrir
what
Square,
aboutism?
no, not at all. Actually,
I know it's not. I know
yeah,
it's
but
not.
like
It's a
all the
valid
sides were using the
comparison.
national anthem.
Yeah, yeah.
All of us were using the national anthem. We think we love the country, and we think they are doing something
Yeah,
against the interests of the country, and it's the
Right.
other way around.
So,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
what is
yeah.
the impact of the myth in people's understanding of what happened?
Yeah, like so what happened was that we've got this myth of the tanks running over these students in Tiananmen Square, and we've got the famous tank man image of the tank arriving and the guy stopping it. Right?
I don't know that I've ever heard someone say tanks were running over people. Have you?
No,
tanks
I don't
running over
think so.
bicycles
No, the
or
tank man
whatever,
is just
right?
like a symbol.
It's a
obviously.
photo.
It's a
Yeah.
photo.
Yeah, but
No,
I
it's
don't
a
think I've
film,
ever
it's a
heard
film, it's a
someone say
video.
tanks were
It's a
running
video.
over
Right, yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
saying like even the photo,
So-
just
so-
the image is the symbol, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't think, yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the impact
So what
of the
happened
myth?
was that there was this big societal convulsion, mainly the Workers' Party fighting against a group of soldiers in a place 4 miles to the west of Tiananmen Square, and it was a terrible, terrible event with hundreds lost their lives.
I don't know that there's such unanimous opinion about the number of deaths. In fact, I'm sure
We
there's
did-
not. There's certainly credible reports of a far greater number of deaths.
Yeah. Well, I didn't say a specific number.
Sure, but you did indicate that the academics had agreed on
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah. I can say it was hundreds. You know.
Let's say
and
it's
that-
thousands. Let's say thousands.
which is far smaller than the
the
general
10,000 that
consensus
NBC
of- right.
NBC said it was 10,000.
Yeah. which it may have been. I mean,
Well, what's that? No source, no academic source, no journalistic source agrees with the NBC report.
sure, but certainly there are many sources that quote it into the thousands.
Yeah. So.
But then when you're asked
But
about it,
how do we
you
choose which one
like-
is
exactly? But yeah,
because I like, you choose what you like. You choose NBC, I choose the academics. That's fine.
I
didn't
honestly,
even-
for me,
yeah.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it was 200 people or 2,000 people. What matters is that students were gunned down in the capital city, and
So-
if you want to analyze the significance of it, here's something we can all agree on: how terrified is China about having anyone remember what happened? At the extent that they go to, what are we looking at now? 30 years later? To stop anyone from acknowledging that something happened is a pretty strong indication that they feel it was quite momentous. Is that a fair statement or no?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Asian countries don't have a free press. China doesn't have a free press. Many Asian countries
I
don't.
thought you loved when Hong Kong had a free press.
Well, I don't know. It didn't have a free press. It has a free press now, thank God. But
Did
it
you think
didn't,
there's a free press now with Jimmy Lai's just been locked up?
You didn't read the charges? There was nothing
yeah,
about.
Well, they were pretty spurious.
Yeah,
It was misusing.
You really
properties.
hate the judiciary here, don't you?
No, I don't. I don't think they're behind it. To be honest with you, they weren't the one. The judiciary don't choose to arrest someone.
So what's happening then?
I think the media is being, and also look at what's happened with iCable, where they claim, we've suddenly had to get rid of all of our reporters that were doing coverage.
This is all sort of underhand. This is the Chinese
Does it not-
intelligence
does it not-
agencies, is it?
Well, they're.
This is the Chinese CIA?
Well, I
doing
say
all
this. You can say one thing about the Communist Party is they are unified,
Yeah.
right? They don't
It's also
make decisions independent of either bodies. They don't have a separation of powers.
Hey, I've been sacked so many times from so many media
But also,
organizations,
if
and
you take-
every single time someone says, "Oh, it's censorship," every single
If you
time.
take
it's
the
standard.
news-
Do you think it's unusual that it's all happening at the same time right now, right after the protests? Or like sort of, at an opportune moment?
Massive economic downturn, people are being sacked. Do I think there's a connection? Maybe
Jimmy
there
Lai
is.
wasn't
No,
being sacked.
okay, yeah. Let me ask this: like, if you take the event
Jimmy-
like the arrest of Jimmy Lai on face value, and say, hey, he was arrested on the charges of
NSL.
misusing his property or whatever it was,
Yeah.
which sound like trumped up charges or spurious at least, and
Because
forget-
go on.
and
Well,
also
can you
choose
enlighten? No, seriously, question. Can you enlighten us what we've misunderstood about the charges that was significant?
Okay. Well, I mean, none of the laws related to Apple Daily, and I can go out right now, this moment, pick up an Apple Daily, and I can show you criticism of Beijing and criticism of government. I can do that every day of the week. I can do it in 5 minutes' time. I can show you how criticism of the Hong Kong government and the China government has increased since the events of the summer, not decreased.
Of course.
Yeah,
No, but that's the truth.
That's not
Yeah.
an indication of more freedom. That's an indication of more opposition.
Do you think that there is no?
But it's not an indication that the press freedom has been lost.
Well, locking him up is.
Well,
None of the charges were anything to do with what he
Do you-
printed,
but-
not
but-
one.
but
Now
what
you're
is-
just making the jump
Okay,
to say, well, it was all pretend. But
Oh.
that's you saying that you know
hang on.
that.
Well, hang on a second.
He's a pretty
Spurious
he's
is
a
the word you
public
use.
figure.
Why would it have it? So your point is that the only way that the Chinese government could ever clamp down on the press is if they use a law that connects to the actual publishing of something. You don't think that they could use another law to get someone?
No, hang on. We're talking about the Hong Kong legal system or the China one. There's
Both.
a difference.
Take a
There's
pick.
a difference.
But either of them.
Okay, I like the Hong Kong legal system. I'm not a fan of the Chinese one. And he was arrested in Hong Kong under Hong Kong laws by Hong Kong people.
So for your
Now, you say it's all spurious charges. That's an opinion, right?
yeah,
Right, it
well, a
is an
lot of
opinion,
stuff is being
sure.
boiled down to opinion when there's a pretty consistent theme of events that's rolling out. Are you not concerned what may happen for the Hong Kong judiciary as it becomes absorbed into the mainland?
Of course. But like, people say to me, oh, well, you have press freedom now, but you might not tomorrow. They've been saying that to me for 30 years now. And like, I now see that there's no value in saying that.
Well,
it might be terrible tomorrow. There's
They
no
have been
value
saying
in
that
that.
to you for 30 years, and don't you think you're always just by the line, so you're never in trouble?
I sort of feel like we didn't
so
cap
many
off.
times.
We didn't cap off on the Tiananmen Square thing though. I didn't feel like I understood what your takeaway was from identifying that there was a myth.
People died on that night, and it's not ideal to ignore the main mass of people who died and their concerns and their families, and instead attribute everything to a relatively small group of people who were killed in a different place at a different moment in a different part of the city.
Okay.
But truth matters.
Truth matters, but also this sounds like you're kind of stuck on semantics of where it happened, and we're
If it had
labeling
been more people, would it have been
Exactly.
different for you?
we're labeling the killing of a bunch of people, let's say in Kowloon, and we're like, oh, we're calling the killing of Kowloon people
Clearly
the central killing people.
I think the location
doesn't matter.
The location doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
You
that's
agree
my
about that,
point.
right?
Does the location really
I mean, if it
matter
was-
to you that much?
Was it in?
No, the people. Like, who remembers that? I go to the Tiananmen Square Memorial every June the 4th.
Do you ever worry about that now with the NSL?
Yeah.
You do worry about that now?
Oh, with the
Attending
NSL.
with the national security law, are you concerned about memorializing? No, I'm a serious question. I'm not saying this to be provocative.
Yeah. I don't like hypothetical questions because there's too many good facts we can talk about.
Do you think that the NSL could affect any of your work?
Sure. I don't like Chinese flavored laws, but Tiananmen Square, right? I go to that protest every year and have done for 30 years. Why? To light a candle for the main people who died.
Sure.
Because nobody else does. Nobody lights a candle for the main people who died, which was the workers' groups, or the second main people who
Students?
died, which were the soldiers. They remember only the third group.
Wait, the soldiers died?
Yes, the soldiers died first. So the workers' group attacked a group of buses, busing soldiers in. The soldiers were unarmed. They burned the buses. They strung up I mean, there's some horrible pictures of people being strung up, the soldiers. They died first. Then
Sure.
then another group of soldiers arrived in buses, and they saw what had happened, and they attacked the workers' parties.
Yeah, but
And
if,
this
I'm sorry, but
huge-
if you put on a military outfit and go to attack a group of people,
And you get killed?
You jumped into the lion's
They
den.
weren't. No, they weren't. They weren't going to attack. They were going to.
Control.
No, they were going to ask the students to leave peacefully, which the students had agreed to do.
And
which the student
probably
had- the
but
student union
why would
leaders
anyone
agreed
trust?
to do that.
Why would anyone trust when you send in the military?
Because
Why
they
would
were
you
their
trust?
cousins. They were their cousins.
Oh, they
marched out. And there's a video.
When you say
see the
cousins,
students-
I'm assuming you mean.
Yeah, like
they
their
don't know- they
countrymen,
don't know
fellow
that-
countrymen.
You
Yeah.
think they're their cousins? They don't think they're their cousins.
No, but you can. There's a video of the students marching out of the southwest corner.
You know
of
what? I
the-
don't like videos.
when
unless they're 10
you're
minutes.
protesting when you're protesting or in your years of protesting, when you're looking at the police trying to crush your protest, do you look at them as your cousins, as your fellow countrymen?
Yeah, when someone's firing tear gas at you, it's hard to think. You know, I got to be honest with you. I don't like most of my cousins, so
My parents are cousins. They don't like each other, so
you shouldn't tell people that. Dude. That's definitely
fine.
illegal. Yeah. The Hong Kong
it's not
judiciary.
illegal in Egypt.
Hong Kong judiciary wouldn't allow that one.
Yeah.
The last thing, because we're running way over time,
Yeah,
and I
we're
really appreciate you giving us all this time. The one other issue that I in researching this noticed that you had commented on was the Uyghur issue in China, and I'm curious as to how.
Big issues.
Well, no, they're not, because they are all connected. They're big issues, no doubt.
they're all
but
connected to evil China.
Yep, I agree with that statement. Yeah. It's curious to me that you're looked at Tiananmen Square and said this isn't as bad as people said it was. You've looked at
Well, I didn't
priests.
say that.
You did. You said there was less people that died. It wasn't. It was a less meaningful location, and that soldiers weren't celebrated for their.
Yeah,
I said
I
the
think that
people
the
who died
standards
are not
kinda
being
d-
remembered.
Right,
Yeah, but that's
kind
a
of
very
diluting the-
rhetorical way of
right.
saying that you feel sorry for the people that perpetrated most of the deaths.
Oh, of
The
course
soldiers. The soldiers.
No. No.
Let's get to the Uyghur thing, because I just wanted you to understand
Okay.
the connection
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So you also feel that what is your view on the way that the Uyghur issue is being perceived in the Western media?
Yeah. I've been campaigning for Uyghur rights for 20 years. It was a theme of a book I wrote in 2003 or something.
That's
I
great.
wove it in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So it's something you're well more informed than we are on it, and then I don't want
I've
to
been
come at
following it for
I don't want to come at you like we know
Yeah.
as much as you do
Yeah.
about
I've
it,
been
but
following it for
I
20
definitely
years.
don't.
But I
Yeah.
would love to know how this fits into you, because it, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you've made an assessment of China and how they're operating, and you're not happy with all of it.
Yeah.
But you've seen the nuance to various massive issues that people, because whether you see it as significant or not, there are other people, myself included,
Yeah.
who view the Uyghur violation as enough for me to no longer trust the people perpetrating that crime. And where am I wrong, and how do you think the
Yeah,
media
yeah.
has perceived that incorrectly?
Okay, well, the Chinese version of the Uyghur story, everybody's happy,
Yeah.
Right.
is clearly wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The American version of the story, concentration camps, everybody dying, millions locked up, is clearly wrong.
Is it clearly wrong?
Well, no, you
I mean,
asked my opinion.
Yeah,
This is my
personally
opinion.
know
This is my opinion.
I personally know people that are there.
Yeah. Okay. So my opinion
Yeah.
is that both extremes.
The truth is somewhere in the middle.
Are wrong, and I think it's being manipulated for people to believe the concentration camp story. But the thing is, I know I've been to China. I've not been to Xinjiang, but I've met Uyghurs in China.
Should be careful out there.
They're very smart people. If there's a concentration camp down the road, they would notice. They're not.
Wait, are you suggesting that the Uyghurs don't know the camps are there? Because that's not
No,
right.
the thing is that you know the French re-education camps, right, or the British re-education program, right? It's based on those, right? And it's not a great thing.
You know what I'm going to say.
Oh, yeah. No,
Well, it's also not a reasonable
No,
comparison.
just okay. Did you approve of the French re-education camp?
I don't know anything about the French
I don't know
re-education
either,
camps.
but I wouldn't approve of it if it's the same like the Chinese one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's to nip that in the bud. Let's say if it's the same, then no, I also don't.
Exactly. It doesn't matter which
Not that
country.
me approving matters, but I am. But I want to know, where did I get it wrong? Where did I understand this wrong?
Yeah. So, I come from a Muslim household, and I don't really approve of the sort of very stern re-education processes that many countries do. And I don't approve of the locking up of Muslims like European and Chinese governments do on a preemptive basis, right? So I don't approve of that. But I approve much less of the US alternative, which is to invade the wrong country and kill 1 million Muslims. That's far, far worse.
Well, is that the choice
I
that
prefer the
China faced?
Again,
China
it's-
it was already China. China didn't need. In fact,
Yeah.
it's pretty openly recognized that China's invasion strategy isn't tanks. It's to, provide tax incentives and other things to increase the percentage population of ethnically Han people in an area.
Except there are more Tibetans now than Han, and the Tibetans
Certainly
are
in
going-
camps.
And in Xinjiang, there are more.
500,000 Tibetans in camps as registered. at
You
the
really
moment.
believe everything you read, don't you?
Is that number wrong? And why is it wrong?
I can put you in touch with a friend of mine who just got back from Tibet. But anyway,
Is she Tibetan?
what about the genocide, Tibetan genocide? Okay, the Tibetan genocide was
Or the
promoted
Uyghur
in the
genocide.
media for years, and it turned out to be completely false.
Yeah.
And what's happening now? Oh, there's a
Genocide?
Uyghur genocide. And what's happened? We found that the Uyghur population is growing faster than the Han population.
Actually, that's not true. The Uyghur population is dramatically
dwindling.
reducing.
Yeah.
If you believe Adrian Zenz, right? Who pays
sorry.
Adrian
Well,
Zenz?
can I tell you
I
something?
kinda believe
can I
my
tell
own
you
friends,
something-
actually,
Can
at
I tell you
this
something that
point.
I know
Yeah.
as a fact?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that there are Uyghurs that are forced to report to public hospitals all over China to prove these are married people that they are not pregnant because they are controlling the birth rate of the Uyghur population. You cannot say that is not true. You can say whatever you like. You can hold whatever opinion you want, but it is a fact that is true.
Yeah.
And the numbers are dwindling.
This is actually, I don't know about
and if there is a number that is in opposition to that, not necessarily generated by the people committing the crime, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, you're very much at one extreme, and I know Chinese
isn't it
versions
extreme?
have another extreme. Yeah,
if
genocide
it's
is a pretty extreme
well, if
extreme.
it's systematic.
And I'm in the middle.
What is a genocide? When would this become a genocide? What does it lack to be a genocide?
Yeah. The thing is, I don't, I was fooled by the Tibetan genocide, and I'm not going to be fooled again. Okay? That was disproved conclusively by multiple sources, and yet.
So do you think that the camps? But you think the camps are real, right?
But they're not that bad, is what
no,
you're saying.
I think they're a re-education. I think, let me put it this way: multiple countries have done re-education processes.
Genocide is in a lot of places.
No,
Myanmar's doing it.
yeah. People are dealing with Muslim radicalists in different ways.
Well,
And-
it's hard to say that 2 million Uyghurs
no
are
one is
Muslim radicalists, though.
In-
That's a bit of a stretch.
Now you're saying there are 2 million in the concentration camps. Is
Well,
that what you're
China
saying?
publishes similar numbers for how many people have not now at one time
Yeah,
but have been
have been in the
re-educated.
camps. China's not disputing those numbers.
yeah.
They say the camps aren't that bad, but they're not disputing the number of people that have been in there at that
Right.
level.
Yeah.
What if and we should wrap it up, and I really appreciate your patience and your time, with us talking through your ideas. But I guess my last question is, what if you're wrong? What if the people of Hong Kong aren't so okay with it? What if this situation in Xinjiang is worse than your estimation? what happens then? For you, do you still think it's okay what's happening?
You've got to be flexible and go with the evidence, right? And that means being a little healthy skepticism about what the mainstream media is telling you. That means talking to people. That means instead of just going with Reuters, instead of the mainstream media.
I mean, I just don't have another poll that I can read out.
Yeah.
Right.
But okay, like which are the biggest news websites? They're all from the West. Which are the three news agencies that's used all over the world? They're all from the West, right?
Well,
Reuters, AFP,
when
and
you
AP.
say the West, I mean it's like not
So
here.
International media is
Right.
is the Western
Everything that
media.
China's not the biggest at will be the biggest by somewhere else.
Yeah. So I'm saying is a little healthy skepticism is good, and a little flexibility to learn and listen is good. Okay, so
Agreed.
My views have changed as I talk to more Chinese people, more Hong Kong people. I've realized that some of my views were very, very shallow indeed.
Is there anything specifically that comes to mind when you think that?
Oh boy, yes. Oh really? Gosh.
Is that? I just mean
yeah.
like general points of where you felt like you'd gotten it wrong.
Let me think of an example.
Okay, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
No, it needs a nice, neat example. Okay, there was a scare where Hong Kong people were traveling right to India, and they wouldn't drink the water because they thought, dirty. And one woman I know took a whole suitcase of Perrier to India and lived on that. When she got back, there was a news item that Perrier had been contaminated. These things happen all the time.
That's funny.
So a
I
little
didn't
bit of
mean
healthy
just generally long
skepticism.
in life. I mean generally.
Yeah.
I meant wrong about China. What was
Oh,
it
yeah.
in talking to the Chinese
Yeah.
people, as you say,
Mm.
that made you realize you had some point wrong? What did you
Yeah.
have wrong?
One moment, for example, a specific moment was I was standing outside looking at the protest, and they were handing out all these placards, and all the placards said, "Defend our Constitution."
Yeah.
Right? And the older ones among us just looked at that and said, "Okay, this is fake." Right? Hong Kong has no constitution.
Has a
right?
mini constitution.
Yeah, which everybody hates.
Right.
No protester movement would print 1,000 things saying defend our constitution, and no real protesters would then march through the city
Right,
holding
yeah.
defend our
But
constitution.
I don't understand. So your point
So-
was that you spoke to old people and they made you realize that sign was created by.
Well, no, that was one incident where I thought,
Oh, this is
you guys are
ridiculous, yeah.
right, we're wrong.
Right, yeah.
You're right, we're wrong.
Yeah.
So someone in your camp pointed out to you how ridiculous this is, and you agreed that,
And I
all right,
thought-
we're wrong.
Yeah, we're wrong. We media just haven't noticed this, and there were 1,000 little instances like that. I thought, okay, this is not what we think it is.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just one incident, but there was so many. There was the Trump 2020 banner that just annoyed everybody so much.
Yeah, the support
Yeah,
of
that was-
Trump
that
is,
was
like,
ridiculous.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
There were just so many of those, though, and I just thought, I'm wrong here, and I
Yeah.
had to revise my views. Yeah.
I veered dramatically over time.
Yeah.
But it's been great, and I really appreciate you giving.
Thanks
up
for your
time.
patience.
Congratulations on your new book, the other side of the story. It's available. Where can people find your book?
Well, I mean, it's supposed to be stocked in Bookazine, but I think it may have already sold out. So grab a copy if you see one.
Well,
It's-
congrats.
Yeah,
Yeah, congratulations, Nury.
yeah.
And hey, I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong.